Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Review. Alright, hi friends and welcome to another weekly wrap up. I am so excited to talk about what I read this week because it was a really great comfort reading week in a lot of ways. Even though I had still some, annotated books to get through, I started off the week with some comfort reads and I ended the week with some comfort reads. So yeah, we're going to talk about those. Also, I want to say a thank you to a new patron slash channel member. I had the lovely Vanessa who joined both my Patreon and channel memberships, so thank you so much. And something I want to say in my next vlog coming out on my Patreon, which yes, I know is behind the paywall, but I'm going to talk about in there again and share some kind of receipts, as it were, as to why my Patreon is so important to being able to do this job, and share some actual numbers about what YouTube is really kind of doing with small creators. And it's something that I am willing to put in a regular video. I've talked about numbers straight up on my channel before. It's more so that I'm lazy, and putting them in a really well thought out video I think is important. And I also think that sharing your own numbers can really kind of scare people or be a really big misrepresentation, because yeah, YouTube is so individual for each person. It just is. And I don't want to scare anyone away by putting it out there as a public video. So that's something I'm going to have on my Patreon, the next vlog, which I'm filming a clip for right after this. I'm going to talk about that. But I have done videos like that before on the channel. They just take a lot of thought out, and when I do it on my Patreon, I can speak a lot more just off the cuff and not expect it to be too held up as an example type thing, which I don't ever mean to do when I'm talking about money, because again, it's so individual. And until you have, even if you had someone who had the exact same amount of years that I had, the exact same subscriber count, the exact same watch time as me, you still will have differing amounts. So it's just not fair to play the comparison game. But with my patrons, I don't mind being really open and honest about that stuff. And they also know when I'm sharing it that it is very specific to me, and I don't have to put all those disclaimers out front. But anyway, I just find it interesting sometimes to see how much YouTube wants to use the content that we provide to make their money off of you and give very little back to the creator. And especially because of a new update they've made to the creator studios, it's just really kind of shouting at you. And if you have a creator studio yourself, you probably know this. They've put what your income is for each video right out there on the page, and so it really just shouts at you how little a payback you're getting for the amount of work you put into stuff. And then they also want to shove AI down your throat, and it just becomes really the only reason that I make these videos is to reach you guys, and then I get supported to do that through my Patreon, right? And the comments that you leave on these videos, I thrive off of them. So please keep commenting and interacting. Just know that, it really is the steady beat of channel memberships and you sharing the videos and loving the books that I recommend to you enough to have people support me on Patreon that allow me to do this full time, as well as the author that I work for, or I would never be able to do this because it's just so disheartening. And I don't know if YouTube really thought that through by putting the amount that you make per video just out there so blatantly, because I'm sure there's plenty of creators that it shows a really big number, But, you know, we all know that the percentage of YouTubers actually making money off of it is so small. So I've got to feel like for a lot of us, it's more disheartening than exciting. So anyway, you guys know I don't like to be a Debbie Downer, and I'm not, because the point is I'm able to do this full time because of people like Vanessa and like all the people who support me here. It's YouTube that I give the side eye to. I don't give the side eye to you lovely people who watch me. But let's get into it. Sorry, I went a little crazy with my glitter today. I did one of my palettes, and I used some of the glitter. And the thing is, the glitter can work its way down into my eyeballs. Even when I try not to put it too close to my eye, it can happen. So don't mind that there. So let's get into it. And as I mentioned, I started off with a few comforting reads this week. And that meant I started with a couple fan fictions. I was in the mood for them after reading Tough Guy, which, by the way, I believe it is set that my my first episode chatting about Tough Guy will go up on Sunday, maybe the day you're seeing this on the Long Game Podcast. If it has, I will link it down below. I don't know when the schedule is for that with the guys, so I don't want to assume, but I'm pretty sure it was for this weekend. That was the whole point, is because one of the guys is away, so I recorded that. But after reading Tough Guy last week, I of course was in the mood to hang out with Shane and Ilya, because in Tough Guy, we sure don't get much of them at all, even though that was a fun book to read. And so I read this one basically off of a prompt on Threads I saw that was Ilya has a kid who is a little bit too like him, and Shane Hollander doesn't know what to do with him. It was like the prompt someone gave. And that led me to this fic that is called Death, Taxes, and Shane Hollander. And this one was written by Fingers Falling Upwards, and it is a kind of second chance romance. So it takes place kind of 20 years after, I think it's supposed to be 20 years after The Cottage, and The Cottage didn't happen. So I don't want to spoil this whole fic, because what does or doesn't happen at The Cottage is kind of the whole point of this. Like, it is a reveal near the end of the fic why Shane and Ilya don't end up at the cottage. But basically, all the events of their lives that were happening were still happening the same, except for in this fic, when they're, how do I want to say this? I even think that's kind of a spoiler. Yeah, so I don't want to say it. But let's just say the way things diverged back in the past, we can say this, is that Ilya ended up marrying Svetlana. And they have a son named Nico. Now, at the current time that this is taking place, the very beginning of this book, is that Shane Hollander is the deputy commissioner of the NHL or MHL, whatever we're going with, the MLH, blah, blah, blah. But he's the deputy commissioner. And Ilya is a college hockey coach. Okay, so they're both still involved in hockey. And Nico is a first-round draft pick, and he is playing for Montreal. Okay, so he's a first-round draft pick for Montreal. And Ilya is a college coach in, I think he's coaching in, where's he at? I'm not sure, but maybe I'm messing stuff up already. Geez, I don't know. I've now read 3 fics since I've read this one because I was in a mood for him again, so I'm messing it up. But either way, the point is, he is like already playing, and he is 17 still though. So he's still having to live at home. And Ilya is taking advantage of his son still living at home because he desperately, desperately loves his son. But he is still a Slavic dad, but he sees himself as trying to be a good balance between some of those ingrained Slavic tendencies where he's still a bit of an asshole with being a very loving father at the same time. And Nico just thinks his father is way too obnoxious. But the way this story starts off is that Nico got recorded saying a homophobic slur. Okay? He got recorded in the locker room, which is filled with shitheads. Okay? It's filled with shitheads. But because he's the son of Ilya Rozanov, him saying this slur got him in a lot of trouble. Now, it wasn't a nice thing to say. And Ilya, he still is a bisexual man, even though he married a woman. And Shane Hollander, who, of course, Ilya knows is a gay man. And Ilya has to take his son for a meeting with Shane. And Nico needs to apologize and promise the deputy commissioner that he will not let himself be seen behaving this way again. So this is a first re-meeting of Shane and Ilya in many, many years. Not the very first time since they mysteriously broke up. Again, we don't know why they broke up or how Ilya ended up married to Svetlana. We don't know that. And, I should also point out, Svetlana is deceased in this story. You find out very early on they aren't divorced. He loved Svetlana very much. She was his friend and then his wife. They had Nico the good old-fashioned way. They were deeply in love in a friendship sense, but they did also love each other. And she died of a brain aneurysm a few years ago. So Ilya is grieving his best friend and his lover. And he has become a bit of a bear, as you may say, not in temperament, but in physicality. He's let himself go a little bit. All those carbs and beer that he's drank has gotten to him a bit. He doesn't really suit up on the ice with his boys anymore, but he's still very charming and very handsome. And when he gets a look at Shane Hollander behind that desk with his glasses and his silvering hair, he is right back to feeling like he's 18 or in his 20s and as infatuated with him as ever. And after this meeting where his son has to apologize for using the F word to Shane Hollander, they start bumping into each other again. And they begin a secret relationship again, all these years later. But there are a lot of secrets and things that they have to work through if they can have a second chance romance. And now there's Nico, how's Nico going to feel? How does Ilya feel about the fact that his son said a homophobic slur? What does that say about him? Has he himself raised a homophobic son? And I just want to say too, a note about this book. This book, fic, was not as heavy as it may sound based on the themes of it, even based on the fact that Nico says what he said. All of these, I think this fic author did such a good job. This fic was so good. I think they've said they will do another part of this. This fic had only just finished when I got my hands on it, so I hope there's a part 2. It had a very satisfying ending, by the way. It was beautiful. And I love the relationship that Nico and Shane end up having. And yeah, but it has a really cool reason why it's called Death, Taxes, and Shane Hollander. Something to do with the inevitability of Shane Hollander in Ilya's life. And yeah, it was so good. I enjoyed it so much, and it was such a comforting read to me. So highly, highly recommend it. And though it was bittersweet, though I'm not the hugest fan of the ones where they're second chance romances this late in life, if Ilya was going to be married to anyone, it being Svetlana, honestly, I understand it. So it was great. All right. Then I read a fic that was a texting fic. I get sucked into those so easily because on Threads, the fic authors often, or not even the authors themselves, sometimes just their fans of the fics, will post some screenshots from the fic, and then I'm hooked, and then I want to read the whole thing, okay, because I loved it. And this one was called 2 Steps on the Water by Anonymous, and this one was a real, it was a short one. It didn't take me long at all. And it starts off with it being kind of post-heated rivalry. Shane has kind of come out as gay, but it isn't known that Shane and Ilya are together yet. And the way this happens is that Troy actually asks Ilya for Shane's number. And Ilya gives it to him. And Troy proceeds to ask Shane out on a date. So Troy is fighting his attraction for Harris in this one, is what's also happening. But he asks Shane out on a date. And what's cute is that Shane sends a screenshot of it back to Ilya and is like, did you encourage him to do this? He's like, oh, of course I didn't. What is he doing? He's like, oh my gosh, that is so cute. And Shane is like, he's asking me out for dinner. And what's even funnier is that Shane tells Troy, hey, just so you know, he doesn't tell him that he's dating Ilya, but he does say, I am actually in a relationship and I love him very much. But if you need to talk to someone about being a gay hockey player, I'm happy to meet up. So it's so cute because, again, this is a fully text fic, and the fic author keeps it that way. So Ilya and Shane, like, Shane is like, I'm going to go meet him. Shane is like, I'm going to go meet him, but, you know, I'm going to talk to him. And while he's on the date, Ilya just sends like, Shane, trying to get him to, and he's like, I am having dinner with him. I'll message you. I'll call you after. But it's really cute. So this fic was fun. It was quick. And I do really like texting fics. But inevitably, I don't like a full-on text fic. I do like there to be some, like, narrative as well. And this fic author said they're thinking about doing a part 2 that is narrative as well. So we'll see if they do that. But I also really enjoyed this one. And there'll be links to both of these fics in the description if you'd like them. Okay. So now let's get into some of the physical books that I read. All right. So the first one was a reread here, was Precious Hazard by Neva Altai. And I have to say, I feel like I enjoyed this one more upon a reread. I was nervous to reread this one after having read Frozen Heart and really disliking it. And then after rereading Sweet Prison and loving it, I was very nervous to reread Precious Hazard because before reading Frozen Heart, Precious Hazard was kind of my least favorite one. I thought it was too long. Arturo and Tara, I feel like they just went at each other so hard and it's just so long. And really, I think what it is, as I've said multiple times, I think that Neva Altai has just gotten too wordy now. I think she's taking too long to tell stories that she used to tell in half the length, in my opinion. However, upon reread of this one, I enjoyed it a lot more. And I really understood their animosity. There are family enemies, right? This is the Cosa Nostra, which is where Arturo's from, and Tara is from the Serbian mafia, and her brother is actually the one who married Tara's, is it Tara's twin? Or do I have that backwards? Is it backwards? Yeah, Tara is, it's her brother, and it's Arturo's sister who got married. Yes, that's what happened. Had it backwards. And it is, of course, our shit stirrer extraordinaire, Salvatore Alejo, who said these two need to get together. And he pulls a few threats, throws his weight around, and says, you two need to work things out. And to do that, I am going to say you have to get married. And make it happen. And he leaves it kind of on Arturo's plate to make it happen. And so what does Arturo do? I keep saying Arturo, I mix their names together. Arturo turns around and then threatens Tara. And I'm like, you know, buddy, just because Salvatore threatens you, maybe don't go about it the same way and threaten Tara. Okay? Because that's what he does. He threatens her. And he ends up threatening her into marrying him. And she's like, boy, I'm going to make your life a living fucking hell for doing this to me. And they do proceed to cause people problems. Now, he did offer her that this would just be a year-long marriage and it should be long enough to appease Salvatore And he offers her basically $1 million a month. And if she will behave, his words, not mine, and be his wife to some certain events and, you know, do this and that, he will pay her off basically, and they can go their separate ways. And she's like, sure, sounds good. But then she spends the whole book trying to find loopholes out of the promises he made her make. So very interesting choice she's making there. But I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it this time around. There is some really spectacular sickbed care in here when Arturo is the one who gets sick, and Tara, because he is contagious, she actually sends the whole staff away, and she, who is terrified of a stove for story reasons, a stove, like, there is some reason why she would be scared of a stove. She cooks for him. She keeps the house clean to keep everyone else safe. And he's so delirious with his fever, which, by the way, during his fever, all he wants is to snuggle her. He's so cute. Because they have, like, hate fucked before he's sick. These two are very sexually attracted to one another, so they have hate fucked a few times. And when he's delirious and fever, he wants to snuggle her and eat her pussy, which he asks for multiple times, and she has to deny him because he is sick. But there is an adorable scene where he's like, I just want neck snuggles. And she's like, what do you mean? He's like, neck snuggles. And he wants to, like, curl into her. It's adorable. But of course, when he is awake and better, he doesn't remember any of this, and he doesn't know that she was the one who was taking care of him, and she's not going to tell him that. He leaves it, or she leaves it to one of his staff members who's like, actually, sir, we haven't been here for a week, and your wife's been taking care of you the whole time. And that just about breaks Arturo in half, because there's this little thing where he's actually obsessed with her. And part of the reason he's so angry at her all the time is that she hates him and he can't charm her. And that bothers him. So there are some reasons why they're both being a little bit extra shitty to each other. And a lot of it has to do with an unrequited attraction, or what they think is unrequited. But I really like how this one ended up playing out by the end. And I enjoyed it more this time around than I did the first time. So that's great. It still is a 4-star read for me compared to others in the series. But and again, because I love so many books in this series so much, it still is like a mid-tier one for me. You know, if we were doing a tier ranking of her books, that's kind of where it would sit. But it definitely isn't as bad as Frozen Heart was for me. Again, right. For me. I know plenty of people like Frozen Heart, but I just struggle to, when you lay out all 12 books in the series, how there are too many that are worse than Frozen Heart for me. Really didn't like that. All right. Speaking of some books that are a disappointment, unfortunately, another book that didn't click for me, and a book that took me, I believe, 16 days to get through, I think, or 15 days to get through, was Tempting Venom. Yeah, this was a chunker. I think it was the longest one in the series, maybe the longest one by her I've read, period, at 577 pages. And I gotta say, I did not really care for this one. There are some shining moments. There are still some key Rena Kent scenes that make this book good-ish. But there were some linchpin scenes that were not there, and made this one, in my opinion, the weakest in the trilogy, which is strange because, you know, I thought that the middle book, which, what was that one? Let me create my next. Sweet Venom. I thought Sweet Venom was going to be the weak one in the series, which I still didn't dislike. Okay, didn't dislike that one. I just didn't, you know, I just wasn't quite feeling that one as much after Beautiful Venom is the first one. Sorry, now I'm forgetting all the titles. I loved Beautiful Venom. And to me, I guess they've kind of just gotten worse. I don't know. And I think a lot of it has to do with, and I'm just going to say it, the instability of Preston, okay? And, you know, she's written other characters who are unstable like this, and who are unstable because of trauma as well, right? You know, Nico and Bran, they have a very twisted but beautiful relationship. Still to this day, one of my favorite dark romances I've read. I thought Rena Kent did great. And I'm not saying that she should only be a one-hit wonder for her romances. I myself did like Kiss the Villain, and Hunt the Villain was okay as well. At least Hunt the Villain felt like a little different than the other two. Whereas, let's be honest, King of Fury or God of Fury, the Kiss the Villain felt a little bit too similar to God of Fury, and it just couldn't be as good. Nothing could be as good as that. But this one, you know, we made Preston, you know, very disturbed. And I knew, of course, it had to do with some type of trauma, right? I knew that. So I was willing to give this character, I know this is going to sound absurd, but I was willing to give this character a lot of grace. I was willing to watch him and Marcus have a very fucked up hookup relationship. You know, we already knew that from the previous books that these two were disturbing. But once I found out what made Preston, what had hurt him, what had made him twisted, what was his mental breaking point, I wanted to see Marcus provide the healing piece. Now, whether that is realistic or not, right, in real life, that your love interest can just fix things for you, that's still what we're looking for in dark romance, right? Like, that is the bargain that we go into, you know. And I recently experienced that when reading Hollow. You know, I experienced that in a book like, oh geez, of course they all go out of my head, but that's what happens in God of Fury. Like, Nico is the right kind of fucked up for someone like Bran, who needs someone who will push him, who once he finds out what's happened, he will avenge him. Like, those are all things that we want out of a dark romance, particularly one with trauma, right? Like, that's what we want. Oh, Pam Godwin's a great one, right? Like, I'm going to put this book down. My wrist is hurting a little bit. Like, that's what we're looking for, you know? And with Preston, and not to spoil all of it, but I think it's fair to say, like, so much of what has happened to him, the vengeance has already been done. I won't tell you by who and how that vengeance was gotten. I mean, I was happy that the vengeance was gotten for him. He deserves to have vengeance done in his name, justice done for him, but we didn't get to see it. We didn't get to live it. And the things that happened to him, I feel like, to make this a like romance, like, Marcus should have gotten to have a part in it. When he finds out what's happened to his baby, to his lover man, he should get to have a part in the justice. And I don't feel like we got to have that. So then it feels like we have so much of this book where these two are dancing around each other. Preston is letting Marcus do these things to him and then acting very homophobic to Marcus, degrading what they have together, running from it, again, because of his trauma. So, like, I have some space for him to be that way. Like, I have some space for it. But then once things get revealed in the end, we just are like, oh, that's why he was like that. But any progress we can make for them together is just Marcus accepting what Preston's been through, because we don't get to go through the, like, purifying. And I don't mean purifying because Preston needs to be purified. I just mean the purifying process for their love. We don't get to go through it with them. So it felt very unsatisfying that I had to go through so much stuff, that we had to see Preston going through these awful things. We're reliving things with him. And then you get to the end and there's no justice moment. Now, if you've read God of Fury, I don't need to spoil God of Fury to say this for you, but you'll know that in God of Fury, there is a specific person who's done something to Bran. Okay. And when not only Nico finds out who did it, but Bran's twin finds out, and Bran and Lan's father finds out, they get justice for Bran. And it is one of my favorite justice scenes I've ever read, because it's also quite unconventional. That's not usually the type of person that you get vengeance upon, right? And I cheer every time. It makes me feel very vengeful and righteous at the same time, that Lan and Nico get to bond a bit over getting justice for Bran, this man they both love so much. and it feels so good. And again, it's not to say that Marcus doesn't get to do some of those things, but they don't feel as satisfying. So again, I didn't put up any spoiler warnings for that because I feel like I've been sufficiently kind of confusing for people who haven't read it. But if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I'm not one of those who's going so far as to say that like, oh, only when she writes MM is this a repeating thing. No, it's not. Because any couple, any pairing, anytime an author has written as many books as Rena Kent writes, you're going to get repetitive things happening, okay? So that wasn't me like tearing it down to be like, oh, she should be done writing MM because she's writing tired trope. No. Because there's plenty of authors I love. I'm about to talk about one of those authors in the very next one who I love, and pretty much every damn story she writes is the same thing, right? But when they then tap into something extra special, then you're like, oh, this is my favorite one. It's just that when you're writing a dark romance with themes that involve, and this is where, childhood sexual assault, abuse, unaliving ideations, unaliving attempts, when a book has those themes in it, and you then don't have the payoff that we want, it makes this book feel like even more of an affront, right? It's why dark romance has a higher risk, higher reward scenario. Whereas when you're writing a contemporary, let's say cowboy romance, which I'm again about to talk about one in a moment, if it's a bit of just so-so, well then it's just so-so, and you don't generally walk away from it feeling let down or betrayed by it. And I think that's why a book like Tempting Venom, not only because Rena Kent is really polarizing anyway, people have so many opinions on her to begin with, because the more fame, the more detractors. That's just how it works. But when people spend almost 600 pages invested in the book and then they feel let down, and like really for me, why I kept pushing so long, not only because I did have an ALC of this book, and it was very well performed, I should say that. This was Teddy Hamilton and J.F. Harding. With a full cast. There was Emma Wilder and Siren Dixon as well. It was very compelling to listen to it, so it was no hardship listening to them perform it. But when you spend this much time in the book, you expect like a better payoff is what I'm saying about it, right? So yeah, I gave this one a 4-star. It was an ARC ALC that I had. Probably would be like a 3.5 straight out for me. Yeah, we'll see. I am looking forward to Crave the Villain. Like, I'm still around. This didn't, have me where I'm cutting off Rena Kent. At this point, I'm in for her new books, right? But that one was just kind of, I don't think she had as solid a beat on the story. And it had some really promising pieces to it, including things that had you doubting your own mind. Preston's a very unreliable narrator, and there were some really cool things with that. But then again, I don't think the payoff was there for the type of story we were dealing with. So yes, I gave it a 4-star. It's a 4 on the spice scale. Also, there were some people saying it was so spicy. I don't know. They did kind of the same thing every time. So it's not any spicier than some of her other ones, in my opinion. There was just, the same level of like, I don't want you to be doing this to me, but keep doing it to me, that you see in Kiss the Villain, that you see in God of Fury. Like, it's the same type of thing there. But yeah, definitely check the trigger warnings for this one. They're, like I mentioned. Okay, now on to what I was hinting at with this, of like, I have my reread of Where You Belong. Now I finished up rereading this whole series here. This one was book 5 in the Black Wolves of Montana, and this one was a second chance romance between Brooks and Juliet. And yeah, I still enjoyed this one quite a bit. This is a couple that when they were together when they were young, they got together as teenagers, and when Juliet is in college, she has a college roommate who's very manipulative, always threatening their mental health and trying to make it your problem as well. And Juliet is very compassionate and naive and cares for this friend. And Brooks, who, let's admit, we all know that Kristen Proby hasn't met a man that isn't obsessive possessive and, you know, only knows one mode, which normally we love, we do, but it ends up driving Juliet to an ultimatum where she either is choosing to help her friend who she believes is on the brink of self-harm, and Brooks saying, this person's manipulating you, F them, you need to get away from them, leave, come be with me, marry me. And she's like, dude, I need to help my friend. And Brooks makes it a ultimatum. Either you stay here and be with me, or if you go see that friend right now who I believe is manipulating you, then we're breaking up. He makes a very impulsive decision. Now, he happens to be right. However, when you read the prologue to this story, it is in his point of view, and so you understand what he's saying, but you also realize as an adult reading it that you're like, Brooks, how about instead you go with, and you're then able to point out the inconsistencies of what's going on instead of just giving this ultimatum to this woman you choose, you love, right? But anyway, then we skip forward, I don't know, is it 10 years? How many years later, or 15 years later? And Brooks, you know, we know he's very grumpy about the fact, if you've been reading the series in order, that Juliet's back in town. She's actually opened a restaurant, which we actually like this restaurant because it is gluten-free. It's a safe kitchen. And his niece Birdie needs that. So his family likes to eat there quite a bit. She herself also needs that type of food as well. And she's back in town, and she's actually divorced from the man that was supposedly just her friend. And he died in a car accident and left her quite a bit of money. But he also had lots of mistresses. And he was not a good partner to her, and he really was manipulating her, and it took her far too long to discover that. But now she's back in their small town, and luckily Brooks is slowly going to lose his reason to stay away from her, and his family still really wants to be around her. And when she starts having some problems with her business, with the safety of her restaurant, he can't help but step in and want to help out. And then that very quickly is going to get them back together. Now, one thing I got to point out, because with Kristen Proby, she is the author that I said I cracked not algorithm. I keep wanting to say algorithm. I cracked her pattern of her stories, and now it's all that I notice when I read them. And you're watching my channel, so I have to point it out to you. Her characters will almost always be having sex by page 100, probably thinking they love each other by page 100, move the person in with them by page 200, and be getting married by page 300 or proposed by page 300. Like, that's what's happening. Sometimes even sooner when it's a case of a second chance romance where they are remembering that they love and moving in by page 100, getting married by page 200, and it was a big happy roundup for the whole series by page 350. So, still loved rereading it. It was still very sweet. But again, once you crack the code on Kristen Proby, that's how she writes it. That must be how she drafts it. That must be how her outline looks. And that's fine. Just once you see how the pudding is made, you will notice it about all of the books. That doesn't mean they're still not interesting and fun. And that one is. And I love Brooks, and I love the Blackwells. And there are plenty of fun scenes where we get to see all of the Blackwells together. And I love that. So again, comfort reading this week. Okay, then once I finished Where You Belong, that was finishing all of my annotated books from June, because yes, I was behind. There's so much going on. And wait till I tell you what's coming up in this next week. It's nuts. But if you remember my July TBR, and maybe you don't, it's okay if you didn't watch it, but I tried to keep my July TBR pretty small, and I wanted to have some books on there that were either rereads or revisiting authors I really liked, or getting to some books that were just indulging myself. And one of those books I had on there is one of my childhood favorites because that is also one of the prompts on my, like, it's not a bingo board, but it's a prompt board in my book journal, which, by the way, I just put up a video yesterday that is help me judge a book by its cover. And that's one of the prompts on my bingo board as well. So please check that out. Help me. It's going to help me put a book on my September or October TBR. So I really would love your help. Please check it out. And one of the prompts was to reread a childhood favorite. Now, it's a bummer that I just had done this actually last December, which was before I made the board. And then at the beginning of this month, I reread West, which was not a childhood favorite at all because it wasn't out yet when I was a child, and I also hated it, so that doesn't count. And coming up next week, again, I said I have stuff coming up. I'm going on my girls' trip with my friend Sarah, and last year we reread Cinder and Scarlet together, which I loved doing, had the best of time doing that. And this year, though, we're going to be, which I'm not going to tell you which book this is, but we're going to be reading a book together that I actually haven't read before. So it isn't rereading a childhood favorite, but we're going to read one together. So when I made my list, one of the ones I had on it, I know I'm done such a long wind up to it, was Hatchet, which literally is one of my favorite books as a kid. This was the 30th anniversary, which, by the way, just discovered that there'll probably be a 40th anniversary coming out soon because this book originally came out, ready for it, in 1987. Okay. And this 30th anniversary came out in 2017. So it is almost time for the 40th anniversary of this book to come out. But I read Hatchet and all of Brian's books in elementary school and loved them. Loved them. My love for survival books and Stranded on an Island and Man vs. Nature, all of it comes from Gary Paulson and Jack London. And I wanted to reread Hatchet. And I had never read my 30th anniversary copy yet. I bought it probably about 5 years ago, and I still hadn't read it. And so, yeah, I indulged myself this week, and I did a reread. And this 30th anniversary edition is actually illustrated by Drew Willis. So there was an intro from Gary in here, and then it actually had these like illustrations throughout that are of the different creatures and situations that Brian is interacting with, which I thought was really cool. And it was great. And I definitely want to continue my reread of the Brian saga because I already want to reread Brian's Winter and The Return and The River and just all of those, and The Hunt as well. So I probably will do that during the rest of this year. But I reread Hatchet, and the only couple things that I'll comment on, because, I mean, I gave this a 5-star for the nostalgia factor. I mean, there wasn't a ton to really say. I mean, it's still super basic. He's 13 years old, and he crashes a plane into a lake. The pilot is dead. He barely survives. And the fact that he does survive for 56 days by himself at 13 is nuts. He is a Boy Scout. He has some skills. But it's nuts as a 33-year-old now. Someone who's 20 years older than this kid. I don't think I could last 56 days. It's wild. It's wild. But the parts that I really like are honestly him, you know, turning his brain slowly into problem solving. Like when he makes a mistake, it can have a really big reverberation. And how he then tries to fix it, and the push and pull of nature, and realizing that there are creatures that will come after him no matter what. And then there are lots of creatures that want nothing to do with him and only see him as like a benign thing in his way unless they put themselves in his way. And I just love his relationship with the wilderness. And it's really that foundational parts in Hatchet about why I really love Brian's Winter, which is actually kind of an AU story. I understand those things now about what if he didn't get saved at the end of this. because Hatchet really is an all-encompassed story. You can just read Hatchet. You don't have to continue reading them, about his time in the wilderness up until like he gets rescued at the end, right? But then Brian's Winter, or yeah, I think it is Brian's Winter, or just the Winter. I can't remember what it's called. But when it continues is if he didn't get saved, would he have been able to keep going? And I don't know if he could have at 13. I don't know. But then there's other ones like Brian's Return is like he ends up back in, he's back in the city, back in the world, and it just becomes too loud and overwhelming. And eventually he craves the wilderness. And as an adult now, he will go back and things like that. So I just love this. And what had kind of inspired me to do it, I mentioned this, is that there was a fanfic that I read called Into the Woods that was, what if Shane and Ilya crashed in a lake and had to survive? And in that one, they survive, I think, 2 years in the wilderness. And it was cool, actually, now having reread this, which parts of Hatchet the fanfic author took. I thought was really, particularly about when Brian goes back to, let me find the picture, because it's in here. Where is it? Let me find it in here. When Brian goes back to the plane to try to see if he can find the I don't know if I can, oh, there it is. He tries to go back to the plane to see if he can find like a survival pack or whatever. So I love this. And then there's one other thing I wanted to say about this. At the very end, because this was a special edition, it has some things. It has Gary Paulson on survival, Gary Paulson on reading, Gary Paulson on writing, and then Gary Paulson answering questions. And I just want to read just one little thing here. And this was Gary Paulson's advice on reading. And let me just read what he said. He said, read like a wolf eats. Read all the time. Read everything. Read every day. Read what they tell you to read and read what they tell you not to read. Just read. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. That's all. That's literally all. He has a bunch more, but I just want to read that piece. So I loved revisiting this. It makes me want to revisit more. And it's funny to me because, for how much I love romance now, and I want there to be romance in like everything, there is a romance about Brian's relationship with the wilderness. And it's not really there in Hatchet because this is a fight for survival. However, when Brian will get to go back to civilization, and all we get to see is just a tiny blip of that in this one, in the epilogue, he has fallen in love with the wilderness. Because once he learns how to survive it and he understands it, there are the rules of the wilderness that are a staple wherever you go in the wilderness that are not the same when you deal with people. Because the people have secrets. People lie, people deceive, and nature doesn't do that. And there's something really beautiful about that in there. So anyway, okay. Then the last thing that I finished was Endless Summer Nights by Willow Astor. And this, of course, was a ALC that I had that I took way too long to get to. I know. But this was the 4th book in the Windy Harbor series. And this was a hockey romance and a hockey player and a tattoo artist. Love it. And this one was, where are we at? Lola and Tully. And this one was a second chance romance. They actually met in college. Again, this is the one that's like set in Minnesota, though this one had kind of the least amount of time at the resort because Tully is playing, he's traveling, and it actually takes place a good amount in New York, and that is where Lola has her tattoo shop. And they actually run into one another at first at the resort because Lola in the beginning, just for a little bit, is actually dating this guy named Patrick, who's actually Tully's rival. And this guy Patrick is an asshole. And he books this weekend away with him and Lola because they're having, I don't know, he wants them to have some time alone. And he books them into the resort at Windy Harbor that he knows Tully's family owns. And he wants to rub his relationship with Lola in Tully's face because he's a gem of a guy, don't you know? He's such a gem of a guy. But it backfires on Patrick because Lola sees Tully and his family, if only for a little bit. And then they run into each other at a wedding. And Lola and Tully immediately reconnect. However, she seems very gun shy for anything else to happen more than them to chat. And Tully just can't quite understand. Particularly because she's the one who left him 5 years ago. She left him. And he doesn't understand why. And so once you find out why she left him and you learn that it wasn't, you know, totally consensual on either of their parts, that she should leave him, things get a bit sticky. There's even a bit of a suspense part that has to do with the stalker in this one. And I thought it was pretty good. It does have lots of flashbacks for it being a second chance romance. You guys know how I feel about those. I'm not a huge fan. And it's also one of those that, for the most part, everything in a flashback, someone describes it in a scene they have together. So, do we need the flashbacks? If we describe everything we see in the flashbacks, then in the scenes, no, we don't. And that's one of my least favorite things. If you're going to do the flashbacks, let them be info I can't get any other way. And there'll be stuff in the flashbacks that then the characters explain to each other in the scene anyway. And so don't put them in there then, because you're just doubling it up and it leads me to then be skipping stuff, which is annoying. So it was frustrating in a few spots for that, but it was a duet narration with Gideon Frost and Megan Wicks, which made it very pleasant to listen to. I did some shopping in the morning yesterday, and then I was working on a cross stitch, which I'm almost done with. I'll show it off when I get to it. I'm so close to being done. And then, yeah, that was good. So I gave it 4 stars. It was a 3 on the spice scale. And yeah, it was a fun one. And I'm excited for the final book in the series coming up, which will be called Now and Forever. And that will be Noah, the Single Dad. And I'm sure that one will be really, really good. So there you go. That is everything I read this week. So let me know what you read this week. Let me know if there is anything fun that you had going on. And yes, I did have one other update. So what I have coming up this next week, I don't know how much reading I'll get through. I'm sure I'll still get through more than I think. But as I briefly mentioned, I'm going on my girls trip with Sarah. So that is going to be Tuesday and Wednesday next week. So I don't know how much reading that I will get done because I'm going to be spending time with her and soaking up every moment. This is our last girls trip before her sweet baby boy gets here. So I'm not going to be focused on reading too much. Then it is finally time for Crafters Retreat season to start. I have a Crafters Retreat on Friday and Saturday. Now, I usually get a couple books done at that because I save up some audiobooks to read for that one. So it'll be Friday and Saturday, which means I will record my weekly wrap up after the Crafters Retreat. So it'll be going up later. If you are a patron, or not patron, if you are a channel member, you'll be getting it later on Saturday than normal because I'm going to record it afterwards. And then, yeah, so that's what I got going on. I got the Crafters Retreat going on, and I'm so excited about it. So that's what's coming up in this week for me, and I'm very much looking forward to it. I got a fun project for the Crafters Retreat saved. It is a cross-stitching project, of course. I'm bringing a crochet project with as well, just because sometimes it's easier to work on crochet than cross-stitch when I'm at the Crafters Retreat, because when I'm doing counted cross-stitch, I have to focus on what I'm doing. And the ladies also want to chat, which of course, that's why we're there. That's why we're going. We're there to be with the people. So I got to be careful about it. But anyway, okay, so that's what's coming up. Thank you all so much for being here, and See you next time.